Well, good morning to you, Laura. Thank you so much for being here on the Seasons of Motherhood series today.
Well, thank you for the invite. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, it's an honor to see you and be able to chat with you today because I know you have a lot of wonderful things to share with people, and I'm very excited about our conversation. Yeah.
You too. Thank you.
Yeah, and I love how we connected through Melinda. She's
Yes,
like the ultimate connector.
she is.
So it's very cool. I love how we've just kind of crossed paths, and it's been really special. It's been an honor to get to know you and to hear about what you're doing. So so very encouraging.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So I'm just going to share a little bit about you, and then you
Okay.
can fill in the gaps after that. So today we are speaking with Alora Ross, and she is the founder of Seeds, supporting every Eve's daughter safely. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. So I'm very excited about that. You are a mother of five and you have been married for 25 years. That's exciting.
Yeah, actually, that one's a little bit old, so
Oh, is
it's
it?
20 going on 28 this year.
Oh, 28. Okay, so then I'm 28 as well.
Okay, 96. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. So you are a committed Christian leader and you have recently joined the fight against human trafficking. We talked about as you being the founder of Seeds Canada. And obviously you are encouraging people to contact you so that you can speak and share about this journey so people know what to do and how that they can help. So maybe based on some of the information I've given today, you can fill in the gaps now about your family and what that looks like and what you currently are doing today.
Sure. So right now we have three kids who are still living with us at home. Our oldest and our middle child are living over in England, and they are both working there. And then our second born is attending Redeemer University, and
Okay.
she's studying to be a teacher right now. She did 4 years of master and going through for her teacher certificate. And then we
Great.
have twins last. Our only boy is one of the twins, and they are 17 and they are in grade 11 at a local Christian high school here.
That's
So
amazing.
that's where family's at.
Mhm.
My husband is the owner and president CEO of his father's business, Grand Valley Forest Fires, or GVF group of companies, and they're a local Cambridge company. And where things are at right now, currently with our ministry, or are you wanting me to go back a little further yet?
Maybe a little bit, maybe a little bit about your family, and then we can go right into kind of some of your early beginnings of your faith journey. So maybe just like, well, actually, you really answered everything that's going on with your kids and your family and kind of what you're
I
doing.
can be very brief because there's long stories, so I can be very brief.
Well, we could be there. We could be here all day just talking about your children and
Yes,
what they're doing and
that's right.
that in general, which is a great conversation.
Yes, it
But
is.
yeah, that's great that you shared about your family and where you guys are at. Maybe what you can do is talk a little bit about your early beginnings
Sure.
and your faith journey.
Sure. I grew up on Paragon Road in Somerstown, Ontario. So it was on a farm
Mhm.
and near Cornwall. So
Okay.
we were about 45 minutes from the Quebec border. So I grew up in a French speaking school and learned
Right.
French at an early age too. Um,
Wow.
yeah, and my dad was he was a United Church minister
Mhm.
and for lots of years. And then when we moved to Cornwall area, I have three older sisters, and
Mhm.
my parents had moved around a lot with my
Mhm.
dad being a minister,
Mhm.
and then decided to settle on the home farm that he had grown up on.
Oh,
And it's quite a my dad's got quite a story. I won't go into all that, but the lady who raised him, she ended up living with us on the farm with her brother. And so I grew up with elderly people in the house,
Mhm.
and there were typically 9 people around our family
Wow.
dinner table.
It was
Yeah,
always
and
crowded, always very
it
full.
was
Not crowded in a bad
exactly.
way.
No, no, but exactly. And so then us having 5 children, it just lent itself to,
Right.
what I already knew.
You already kind of
'Cause
understood the whole chaos of, a lot of people around the table, a lot of people in the kitchen, and a lot of people using the bathroom. So you know.
exactly, exactly. And then, just trying to yeah, live through all of those circumstances, right? With so many people in the house.
Yeah.
And as it was, so then my dad's mom, she eventually moved in with us as well. So there was the lady who raised my dad and his mom and her brother. And so, and then there was my dad working in United Church, but also farming part-time.
Okay.
So it was an active farm that we grew up on. So we had an acre garden that I remember in grade 3, my mom picking us up from school saying, we got to plant the garden today.
Right.
Like, okay.
You're like, okay, let's do it.
I get out of school. Okay. And so a Christian home, right? And so even though my dad's parents, and they were not believers, but my dad came to faith in the United Church, and then went on to Toronto Bible College and came back and became a minister. So that was our growing up years. And my mom actually grew up in Breslau, and she met my dad at Toronto Bible College. And so she's Mennonite and my dad's United. But then the funny thing is they ended up sending us to a Baptist church to grow up in, because the United Church didn't have children. So they wanted us to be with children. And
I understand. That makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. I mean, we would go on occasion to visit my dad's church, but my sister being 8 years older than me, when I was about 8 and starting to have those, more memories, I just knew that that's all the church I knew was. She would drive us to the Baptist church, and so we grew up in that environment.
Wow.
So
neat.
Yeah, a Christian home. So yeah, it was, and then faith journey from there. So I came to Christ at an early age, more out of fear, to be honest, that I didn't want to go to hell. And then the love side that I didn't hear about till later. But it was still, that was a start, right? That was a beginning. And then I went off to camp at the age of 12, and it was a Christian camp, and heard there about the love of Christ that really sunk in, that Jesus actually loved me. And so that was transforming, actually. And at the same camp, I didn't really think about this until just a couple of years ago. But at the same camp, I felt called by the Lord after that he had told me someday I'm going to work with prostitutes. And I live on a farm, on Paragon Road.
And so you were 12 at that time?
I was 12 at that time. Yeah. And I remember at the time thinking, how is that possible? I'm on a farm. It's just not my environment. Right. And, and then it wasn't until just a couple of years ago that I thought back to that. I was like, oh my goodness. I mean, the women that I work with now, there's a fine line between prostitution and human trafficking sometimes. And so the lines are a bit blurred, but just even to know that God was preparing my head and just my soul, really, I believe, for the work that he was going to be calling me into much, much later.
Wow. That is really amazing. I find that has happened a lot in a variety of conversations I've had, that a seed was planted at a very young age. And it's kind of neat, because it reminds me of how creative God is and how sovereign he is, because it didn't mean you had to act on it. It just meant that you thought, whoa, okay, it's in me, I've got that. And he never lets that go. And it's like he walks with you the whole time, and using every stage of your life. And now, the stage that we're at, right? We look back at this thread and we see, wow, from 12 until now, look what you did and where you placed me, and then who crossed my path, then this person, and then this ministry, and then that person. And you think, how could I have planned that? Only God could have done that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's been a beautiful journey, you're right, as you look back, right? And you think about God's faithfulness in continuing to plant those seeds and grow them at various times. Sometimes they're dormant, like that one.
Yeah. And that's okay. I think part of life is the dormant seed. And I've seen that time and time again in my life, and family members and friends that just talk about the fact that, why did God give me this idea? Why is this planted in me, but I can't get and I can't do it? Why is this happening? And it goes back to even what our pastor talked about last week, was stop worrying about tomorrow and what you're going to do, and focus on seeking first the kingdom. It doesn't mean you don't do anything and sit back passively, but our relationship with him. And God will reveal to us in his perfect way in his time, just like he did for you, for sure.
Yeah.
So then maybe that's a great time to talk about how, if this was planted when you were 12, when did you start to see seeds actually start to come to life? So maybe you can share a little bit about seeds now and the background and how you got there to where you are today, really.
Right, sure. So in reality, I knew nothing about the issue of human trafficking until an offhanded comment from my husband's doctor. And that's a whole story there, which I won't get into. I'll save that for another day. But why he needed to go see part two. There we go. And anyways, it was an odd comment. We had just bought this farm that we're living on now, and my husband had gone to see his doctor, and his doctor, he came home from lunch, just going out for a casual conversation, and told me about what they talked about. And he said, the doctor had asked him, he said, "Oh, I heard you bought a farm. Would you consider converting your barn into a home for survivors of human trafficking?"
Randomly. Okay.
Right. And I'm like, what is that? I'd never heard of the words before, human trafficking. And that was in 2013. So 11 years ago, right? And so from that point, it was like that dormant seed that God had planted so long ago was just starting to, even just stirring the soil around it, right? And so from that point, I did more research and got to know people, and to the point that we're at today, which is an organization that seeks to support and house survivors of human trafficking in the Waterloo region. So yeah, it's been a journey of discovery.
Yeah, absolutely.
Growth.
Yeah. Did you actually take your barn?
No. No. And if you had known why my husband went to visit this doctor, he would never even have asked. But anyways, because my husband was under a whole lot of stress at the time. And I mean, our whole family was, to be honest. And then insert this issue. And so we never did convert our barn. But that was one of the, I mean, I hate to say I made a condition with God, but I sort of did. I'm like, God, it has to be close. Like, it has to be close to our property. I can't drive an hour to get to work every day, especially given, sometimes the emergencies that would arise. And so God blessed us, and that the place that we have is only about 5 minutes from here.
Wow.
So yeah, it really is quite, God just does all the little things, not because we ask, but because he delights in showing us that he can do more than what we ask, actually. And this house is more. It's more. So it's lovely.
Absolutely. So what year did it actually officially open? Like, when would you say the doors actually opened to bring in these women? Because I know it's for 18 years and up, correct?
That's right. Yes. So officially, we got our letters of patent in 2018. So we say that we started in 2018 with a board at that point, but it was still a lot of behind the scenes work to get this running. So it took us, we ended up getting charitable status in 2021.
Okay.
And so it took a while for us even to write everything that CRA needed in order for us to become charitable. And so once we got charitable status in 2021, then donations started to come in significantly, which was phenomenal. Then we rented a house, and then that didn't work out. And then we rented another house,
Mhm.
and still behind the scenes, still working, still like
Mhm.
we did a soft launch in 2022, and I realized that I was missing so many components. And yeah, and God showed us too that we just needed more people.
Right.
And so he brought an executive director to us last summer in 2023, and we brought a program manager on. And so actually at this point, the house is still not open because we need to hire 5 people who are qualified to work at the house so we can have it staffed 24/7.
Right.
That is our goal. There are some houses in the area that are housed for survivors, but they're not 24/7 staffed.
Okay.
And so that was one of our goals that we had for the home.
Right.
So
Right.
we're getting there. Where I actually have another interview today.
Do you?
for
That's great.
another
You got to get the
position.
word
I
out.
do. I
Well, that's
know,
amazing.
exactly. So once we hire the people, then we can open, and that's what we're tentatively saying, the end of March,
Amazing.
that we can actually open, which would be good.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. Well, you know, there's going to be women that are ready, that don't even know they're going to
Yes.
be there necessarily, and it's going to be the perfect time for them. And it may not be what you would have thought in your team or your board because you've been working on this so long, but it's
Right.
it's like one of those things. You open the doors and go, this is why. And we don't know the whys, right? We just have to trust that God knows what he's doing, and
Yes.
he's going to show us and give us, just like that book title. It's one of my favorite titles by Stormy. It's called Just Enough Light for the Step That I'm On. I've never
Yes.
forgotten that title because
Yes.
it's so true in life.
Yeah.
I just need that light to get to that next step. And that kind of
Yes.
sums up life in general and motherhood in general.
Exactly.
Yeah. Maybe talk a little bit about, because this is Seasons of Motherhood,
Yes.
what would be that intersection of this charity that you started and motherhood, and how this has kind of maybe impacted your family? And I'm sure there's been a lot of trials and ups and downs and struggles, but how for you as a mom, kind of taking this on and watching your family grow and change too over the past, say, 5 to 10 years? Yeah.
Right. And so when the issue was introduced to me, like our youngest 2 were only 5.
Wow.
And so they were like little, right?
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
even then I'm thinking, okay, what can I do? I still have little kids.
Yeah.
And, but God in his process took 10 years, 11 years.
He's like, it's okay. I got this.
Exactly. And now that they're older and they just got their license, so they're driving now. And, but even during that process, it was interesting because, so in 15, I met my first survivor that I would actually start
Mhm.
supporting.
Okay.
And so I've been able to, by God's grace, continue to support her for the last 9 years.
Wow.
So we are walking a very lovely journey together.
Mm.
And from where I've seen her come from to now has been incredible. But like, I think a big part of it has been having my children involved in her journey too.
For
And
sure.
yeah, I specifically remember one time where she came over for a visit and my kids were acting up, right? As kids do. I mean, they were acting up according to me. Yeah. I mean, your children are probably perfect, Sandy.
Oh,
But,
that's funny. We have part
Right.
3 coming up.
lots to talk about.
Oh.
And anyway, so I apologized to her afterwards for how they were behaving. And her responses, they weren't throwing things. And I'm like,
Wow. You're like,
oh, perspective, right? And
yes.
it just made me realize what was normal for me was a different normal for her.
Right.
And but at the same time, I think it can give survivors hope that their life doesn't have to be chaos, right? And so it can become a more peaceful and centered and quiet a life. And God has blessed us with that as a family, that we've had a relatively quiet life, always doing something.
Yes.
But our kids have been able to see the rewards and the changes as we all journey with people, and see them go from like step A to step B to step C and all the way through. So that's been a blessing.
I think that is truly the most incredible invitation for your kids to watch how you and your husband were being Christ's hands and feet, just right there in your home. And it didn't mean you were starting an organization 10 years ago or when your kids were 5, but you simply said, yes, I'm going to walk alongside you. And it didn't mean 10, it means 1. And she comes over for dinner. And, maybe she did grow up in that tumultuous type of environment where there really wasn't stability or security or peace. And for whatever reason, God in His sovereignty had brought that into your home. And so instead of hiding it, you share it. It's like you share the light and you become a city on the hill and you say, come on in. And here's our home and we're going to love you where you're at no matter what. And that will impact her likely for eternity. And your kids, as they go into their situations, will be constantly changed because their hearts have seen the hard and they know that there's need out there. And I think that that is truly one of the greatest gifts you can give your children. I think you'd probably agree.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's been transformative for all of us.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. How would you, so if somebody's watching today and they wanted to know how to get involved, or if they know somebody maybe that's in a situation like this where they are being trafficked or they don't know what to do, what would you say to somebody today, or what could they do? I mean, this is almost like a multifaceted question, but how could they reach you, and maybe even how they can get involved? And for that next part would be, what about somebody that is in this kind of a crisis situation? What could they do to help that person?
Okay. So I'll answer the first part. How can someone get involved? Well, first of all, how can they reach me? Yeah, it's simple. It's laura@seedscanada.org. It's pretty simple. And then how people can get involved. So Sandee, I actually turned 50 this month. It's crazy. I can't believe it. And so how Facebook offers like this charity that you would like to raise money for, right?
Right.
And I have done other years raising money for seeds. But this year I was just been thinking more and more about it. It's like, so rather than, raising $5,000, but that's good too. Like if people want to donate, we'll still take it. But I'm like, we need people. We need people involved in our ministry, because I have so learned long ago that I cannot be the only person in a survivor's life.
No,
I just can't. No, totally. And like since we've started, I've been able to intersect with the lives of about 30 survivors. Wow. And I have different roles in all their lives, right? But there's just a number of them that I significantly support, either financially or emotionally, those spiritually, those kind of things. And so my greatest desire is to have people come alongside and say, I would love to join you in mentoring and discipling some of your women, and or just coming and saying, do you need the lawn cut until you establish chores and routine?
Yes.
Do you need maintenance or those kind of things? So very practical needs for sure. And then the other thing too, what can they do if they encounter someone who's in this position? Again, just reach out to us. We can at least get this time started, and so that we can figure out the next steps, kind of conversations. So there's also the National Trafficking phone line too, to call and to get set up there too.
Okay, I'll make sure I put all of these things down so that people can get in contact with you, because I posted on my blog as well. And then when this goes on to YouTube and the podcast. I'll make sure that everything is there so people can easily access any of the information. But what I love is the practical component that I think a lot of people might shy away from volunteering because they're like, well, I don't have my sociology degree. I'm not a nurse. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor. But mentoring is not about all your qualifications. It's about God calling you to meet somebody just kind of right where you're at and right where they're at. And it's about having a coffee and walking and talking with somebody. It doesn't necessarily mean their life's going to change in that moment, but it begins a relationship. And that is life-giving, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that is why we understand how even just having a house that can house 4 women, 8 women, it seems like such a sort of drop in the bucket, if you will. But what the ripple effect for that one woman of her life being so changed, it then changes her children's lives and maybe her family's life, right? But investing in that one woman can have such a ripple effect.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm excited about that kind of thing for sure.
Yeah, me too. It reminds me, I was just reading with my daughter Katie this morning, a portion from Rebecca McLaughlin's book about 10 questions every teen needs to ask and answer. It's not exactly the title, but it's such a good book. We were just talking about the women in the Bible and the role of women and the importance of women and how Christ elevated the status of women and how often people think Christianity does the opposite. And it's actually the complete opposite, that Christ elevated them. So we were talking about the Samaritan woman. And it reminds me so much of what you're doing, that she didn't know how valued she could be or how worthy she was until Christ met her right there at the well. And then she went back, just like you're talking about the ripple effect. Then she ran back and she's like, you guys got to hear this. Look what Jesus did. This man knew everything about me. And then she became this evangelist. And so I guess it's just a reminder for anybody watching today, and for myself too, nothing is too small.
Yeah.
And mowing a lawn, gardening, picking weeds, washing windows, cooking a meal. So I think people need to hear that so that you can have this abundance of volunteers just kind of at your fingertips, because that's what you need.
Absolutely. And I mean, when I first started working with survivors, my thought process was like, who am I? Like, who do I think I am? I didn't go through an ounce of what they've gone through.
Right.
And then a good friend who's been involved with survivors of human trafficking for a very long time, he said what then reminded me about what this survivor had said earlier about my kids. He said that, Laura, you've got a good normal. All they've ever known is a bad normal. Like, everything that's happened to them has been bad, and that's normal for them. They've normalized it. But you can come along and saying, that's not the life that everybody has lived. And so introducing a different perspective. And for people who are like me, who've grown up in the church, who sort of shy away from marginalized people or abused people because you don't know what to say, you don't know how to act, just start somewhere. I started at a soup kitchen and having my first conversation, and like it can start small. It doesn't have to be, we don't have to, and we don't necessarily want people to jump right into being a mentor without any kind of training. And that's the other thing too about our organization, is that we will train. We will train for what the mindset of a survivor. We will train for how to work with them if you're doing hands-on work specifically. But our staff are the ones who are there with the social work degrees and the criminology degrees. And so volunteers don't necessarily need that.
Yeah, no, I think it's really incredible, because when fear becomes the barrier, we're missing out not only on blessing, but being blessed. And I think even though you go in maybe with the mindset that I want to help these women and help them change, God's really doing a work in you too. So
I think about how much I've changed, and oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you have this kingdom mindset that's contagious. And I just know that this conversation is going to impact people and encourage them to reach out, whether it's prayerfully, financially, or physically, or whatever they can do. So I'm really excited to be able to get this out there so people understand what Seeds is, so that these women are affirmed and loved and reminded how worthy they are, because they really need that. They absolutely need that, because like you said, their normal is not necessarily our normal, and they need to understand how loved they are.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Yeah.
I'm excited
Yeah.
to see where God will go with this.
Yeah, well, I look forward to chatting with you again to get some progress of when it does open, and then so maybe we can meet back again and we'll kind of do a look back and see what God has been doing. And so thank you, Laura, for being here today on Seasons of Motherhood and sharing your journey and your story. And I'm so grateful for you, and I'll keep praying for you and the ministry and all of the others that are involved. So thanks for being here today.
Thanks so much, Sandy. I appreciate it.
We'll talk to you soon.